Serious night owls of Reddit, what is the creepiest thing that happened to you when everyone else was sleeping? So back when I was living way out in the countryside, I used to have to drive a good 20 minutes just to get to a county maintained road, and then another 40 minutes into the city to go to school and work. I'd go to school in the mornings and then work with a video production company filming weddings and bar mitzvahs and such. The events tended to run well past midnight, and then would have to break down and transport all the gear, lock up the shop, and then it'd be an hour of driving get back to my girlfriend's family's home way out in the ranch land. I'm driving home one night, probably 2 or 3 a.m., exhausted and probably in need of a tall glass of water if you follow, and I get to the end of the pavement and start blasting down this tiny dirt road, in that real country dark, where all you can see is a little cone of headlight. Mesquite bushes and desert grass make this sort of wall on either side of the road, so it's like driving down a little chute of scraggly little branches, and I'm coming around this corner when up in the road is this fucked up looking thing. I slam on the brakes and shoot this wall of dust out ahead of me, but through the dust, sitting centered in the beam of my headlights, is this white, hunched figure. It has long legs and haunches like a jackrabbit, but it's a good 4, high and kinda lumpy, like an illustration from those scary stories books, and I am terrified. It kinda rocks a little bit and shivers, and I'm looking at this thing and it makes no sense at all the way it's shaped. I stare at it for a good minute, just idling in the middle of this road, trying to make up some kinda story to myself to explain what the hell I'm looking at, but I am completely stumped. So I start creeping the car forward, and as I'm getting close enough to see the shapes of its muscles and the shine of fur, the thing hops up, and the bit I thought looked like a head with a long ear stretches up and out, changing its whole shape. Like something out of the thing, and I about screamed. Still nearly invisible, except for its white striped legs and underbelly, this black cow that had been sitting at the edge of the road stood up, showing part of its body that had been hidden behind a folded black leg, and staggered off into the bushes to find a spot to sleep where people weren't blasting it with high beams. I felt like an idiot later, but in that moment where it was rising up and like unfolding itself, if I had run off before I saw what it really was, I'd be swearing to this day I saw a chupacabra or a demon or some craziness. A long while back, when I was still a teen and living with my parents, I wanted to listen to some music, but it was quite late. I went downstairs to the garage and decided to listen to music in my car. After a while it was quiet as I was deciding on the next CD to play when I heard what sounded like leaves crunching outside. I looked in my rearview mirror and saw a figure coming up the driveway. The motion-activated floodlight on the garage did not illuminate as the figure approached the front door. I quickly and quietly head back inside and go up to the kitchen where I could get a view of the front door. It was still quite dark, but I could make out the shape of a person standing at the front door. They stood there for a moment before I hear a knock. Obviously, this is strange for a quiet neighborhood at 3 a.m. I reach for my phone and dial the police, but after waiting for another minute that felt like an eternity, the person turned around and walked away back down the drive and into the street, being careful to avoid the only streetlight. Before the police had arrived, he was gone. They started to search the area but found no one. One officer came to ask questions and get a description, but it was so dark I couldn't make out anything useful. To this day, I still have no earthly clue why this happened. I used to live out in the middle of the country in Arkansas. I lived alone at the time, at a property my mother would rent out occasionally. It was a large, 3-bedroom home, 2 stories. This house was right on the highway. A dirt road connected to that highway and led to houses that were a few acres behind my own. It was around midnight one night when I was still awake in the room where I kept my PC, all the lights were off. Suddenly, I could have sworn that I heard voices on the front porch of my home. My PC room was connected to that porch by a window. I immediately tensed up and listened. I couldn't make much out, but I was still so sure I heard someone speaking. Another detail about the house at that time was that the front door, and most of the windows, thank God not the case for the one in my office, didn't have blinds or any means to cover them. Up to this point, since I lived in the middle of fucking nowhere, I didn't lock my doors most of the time Looking back, I think I had my front door locked, but at the time I couldn't remember if it was. There were far too many exposed windows to just walk up to it and lock it too, at least to my paranoid mind that night. Most of my lights were off thankfully though, so I slipped back to my bedroom, which was down a hallway, grabbed my shotgun, again, it's Arkansas, locked the door to my bedroom and waited. I still remember putting my iPhone to the base of the door, turning on the camera, and using it to see out in to the connecting hallway in case someone had come inside. Thankfully I never saw anyone. I finally fell asleep a few hours later. Later though, I heard about how a neighbor on my dirt road had a son that had been arrested in another state. The son had broken out and fled back home to that exact fucking house around the time I heard those voices on my porch. He'd been tracked down eventually and arrested there. Only half a mile from my home.